question, a wonder. We will not leave until all of your questions or requests for tools or supports are answered. So we just welcome you to the space. We're really going to talk about what are we doing to make sure that our staff, and that's teachers, that's custodians, that's everybody in the building, know that they are supported, that they are resourced, and they are vital to improving student outcomes in our schools. This is probably more important than ever before. I'll say this, I think we all do this when I'm with a group of teachers. I usually start off the meeting and just to say, are you okay? Or, I know teachers we all had a really, really tough year last year. The year before was unprecedented. We're tired of hearing that word. And so now we're at this really interesting place in our collective careers to make sure that we are providing supports to teachers in a way perhaps that we have not done before, and providing supports to every other person in the building to make sure that it is really creating a place of continuity, of inclusion and support. So with that, I am going to pass the virtual baton to my wonderful colleagues, Dr. Anderson, the brand new Office of Math Improvement Director. She's going to make us all love math in a way we had never done before. She has already done that for me, and I'm an English teacher. And Ms. Tara Smith, a game changer on our team, supporting schools across the state. So I pass it back to you, and I will be manning the chat to see if I can answer any questions. Thanks so much.
Good morning, everyone. I am Karen Anderson, and it's my pleasure to serve as the Director of the Office of Mathematics Improvement. And I want to be sure that my colleague, Tara Smith, introduces herself as well.
Good morning, everyone. I am Tara Smith, the Office of School Improvement. Excited to be joining you all today.
We can go on to the next slide. So just as a reminder, if you would like to have credit via PowerSchool, please be sure to register. You see the information there, the section number 456. 459, please be sure that you have registered if you would like to have credit, and once your attendance is confirmed, that credit will be awarded. If you have any questions, please put those in the chat. So at this time, we'd like to know who's in the room. If we were doing this face-to-face, we'd ask you to raise your hands. We can get an idea so we can kind of fine-tune our presentation accordingly. And I got some feedback there. We're going to try to address that. So if you will, please drop in the chat your role. Shout out to all of our central office folks. Please just drop your titles, your affiliations in the chat. Our principals of schools, great work you're doing. Teachers of whatever grade level that you're in, and everyone who's in a position such as a counselor, a librarian, a coach, a specialist, state departments, let us hear from you today. Please just drop it. Oh, I see it coming in the chat now. All across the state. So excited that everybody is here. So here is our agenda. The S in SOS, the first S is to start strong. It's just so important to get off to a good start with every stakeholder in your school. So we're going to discuss policies and procedures, mentoring, professional development, those kinds of structures to ensure that we do have a strong start. We'll move from there to offering supports through classroom management and helping our teachers feel that autonomy over student success. And finally, shine your stars. It's so important that everyone feels appreciated and welcomed into the school and district family. So we'll just offer a variety of strategies in that vein as well.
So as we get started, if you'll take a moment and just read the quote on the screen. So approximately 50% of new teachers, and we have quite a few of them, will leave the profession within the first 5 years of teaching. So we want to make sure to keep our teachers in the field that we start strong. So what does start strong mean? So we want to make sure that we provide a quality teacher induction program. Having a quality teaching induction program over the first year or several years can increase teacher retention by 21%. We need to make sure that our teachers get a strong start, that they know what is expected of them. We want to make sure that we have oriented them with the teacher handbooks, the policy manual, so that they know district expectations. Teachers become frustrated when they don't know what's expected of them, and they're trying to figure it out as they are performing their daily job duties. So we want to make sure that they know that expectation up front. What are those priorities that are in the district? What are the rollouts? How do they request leave? How do they put in for a sub? We want to make sure that our teachers have been oriented with all district policies and procedures from the start of the school year. We don't want them to have to guess or wonder or ask coworkers and get mixed information, mixed messages. We want to make sure that they know the district plan, they have an understanding of it, and they know how to reflect on that teacher handbook or policy manual to get the information that they need. We also want to make sure that they have mentors. The state requires a mentoring program for new teachers, so please make sure that you are implementing that in your districts and your schools. And when we think about mentors, we want to select coaches who have time to work with new teachers. They can provide frequent opportunities for teachers to observe and be observed by experienced teachers. We want to make sure that we are modeling for them and provide them with reasonable teaching load, that their schedule that they have is reasonable. They don't feel overwhelmed as they start the school year. We want to make sure that they have opportunities to collaborate with their peers. So choose mentors that can really provide that guidance and have the time to do so. We want to make sure that everybody does their part at the district level. Establish a welcome package, share your district's vision and mission, outline those non-negotiables that you have in your district so that teachers know what they are. Same thing at the school level. We want to make sure that we welcome them. We've given them a mentor. We provided them with clear communicate those expectations, and we've outlined those non-negotiables for the school and the classroom. And teachers, which looking at the chat, we don't have very many joining us, but encourage them to ask questions and seek clarification. We want them to schedule time to plan. So if you're leading the building principals, which we have several principals in here, please make sure that you provide scheduled time for teachers to plan and support them in that planning process. In a recent survey, we had 12% of teachers report being very satisfied with their job, only 12. And more than 4 in 10 said they were very or fairly likely to leave the profession within the next 2 years. We know that teacher turnover is, one of those things that we've been dealing with a lot lately. So we want to make sure that we can reduce the turnover rate and keep the teachers that we are investing in now. If we have new teachers in our building, we want to keep them by investing in what they need to be successful, providing them with high quality professional development. In the last 2 years, this is what our exit has looked like from the teacher field. So we've had quite a few people to exit, whether they were retiring or leaving for various reasons. But we know now that the teachers that are entering the field have varying levels of experience. We're not getting teachers with traditional educational backgrounds. So what are we doing to support those teachers once we get them in our buildings? Well, we don't need to make any assumptions. I know that we need to provide them with these resources that have proven to work over time. Now you're looking at some of these and saying, hey, Harry Wong has been around a long time. Yes, he has. And there's a reason why these books have stood the test of time, because these books provide those best practices that we need to make sure that we're equipping our teachers with. So give them this book. It has a lot of quality information that teachers can use. Don't assume that they're coming in the classroom and they know these things. We don't want to make any assumptions. We want to equip them to be successful. Also, there's several resources that we want to make sure that our teachers are aware of. ALSDE, or orient them with the ALSDE site. On that site, there's a lot of resources that will help them in their instruction. We want to make sure they know what proficiency skills are. They looked at them, they have access to them. So we want to make sure we provide them with these resources. Power School. As a new teacher, you know, getting started with Power School can be overwhelming. So we want to make sure that we've had an opportunity to train them with, and not just giving them a sheet that has directions or has the setup process, but actually allow them to sit at a computer with someone who is knowledgeable, a co-teacher, or someone that can help them access the attendance, grade book, all of those components that they will have to use daily. Don't assume that because I gave you a paper with the setup procedures and processes on how to access Power School, that teachers are going to be able to do that. Again, we're coming into the field with various levels of experience. Our backgrounds are different. So we want to make sure that they know how to access Power School attendance and grade book so that it is ready for them to use in their classroom. Make sure they're aware of your academic programs, what they are and how you use them throughout the district. They're aware of assessment tools. They've had some professional training on iReady or STAR, all of those tools that will allow them to be successful in the classroom, and lesson plans. So we know that one of the things that teachers talk about a lot is having the time to plan. But have we really told them what is expected in that lesson plan? Walk them through, you know, what objectives are. How do they look at implementing those activities? In our role, we go into a lot of schools and we are surprised, and I can't say surprised, let me just say we're learning that a lot of our teachers, when we're talking the language of education, like make sure you teach your standards, put your standards on the board, they're looking at us like, what is a standard? We don't want teachers to be going all year and not sure what a standard is. So we want to make sure that you provide them that training within the district. Don't assume that they know what standards are. Show them how to access ALEX, the Alabama Course of Study, how to pull up those grade level standards, and how those standards can be used in their classroom when they're planning using those, their teacher guides, those resources as textbooks, okay? So make sure that they have access to ALEX, provide them with training, and again, utilize ALSDE. These two things will really help them when we're looking at lesson planning and teaching standards.
So we are just always concerned about using strategies that work. High impact practices, just wanted to do a quick review of that. You may be familiar with Dr. John Hattie, is one of my favorite people. And he has organized a number of meta-analyses of instructional practices. At this time, certainly pre-COVID, but definitely now because of the learning loss and all these other things that have occurred, we are not just interested in implementing practices. We want to implement practices that work, those that have a high impact. So when you see a list of strategies that have what's called an effect size, that effect size means the impact of that strategy is about 1 year's worth of growth. So what we're interested in is those practices that will have even a higher effect, a higher impact. So to that end, you're looking for strategies that have an effect size even greater than 0.4. Next slide, please. This is a resource that we share often, and you can find this online. If you just Google, you'll find this particular resource, and we'll be sure to have a link to this so you can go to it directly. But it's hard to see the numbers right now the way that they're written. but you've got things like collective teacher efficacy that has a 1.39 effect size. That's more than 4 times the regular, more than 3 times the typical effect size. So we're looking at, it's just so important to be aware of these particular strategies. Summarizing has a 0.74. Response to intervention, response to instruction, our RTI system has over a 1 point effect size. So I encourage you to become familiar with this list of strategies and to use them. Thank you. The chart, a link to the chart has been dropped in the chat for your reference. I use this often. It's highlighted. It's just a wonderful, wonderful resource. It's so important that you inspect what you expect. Our teacher observation tool, ATOT, has been rolled out, and it's just really important to build ownership by inspecting what you expect. Please just don't assume that teachers understand what best practices are and just what you want to see when you're going into a classroom. So this particular tool has been identified. The State Department has worked extensively with Cognia to develop this tool. And with this tool, there are 5 different dimensions of teacher effectiveness. If you take the first letter of each of those dimensions, it's clear. I really like using that acronym because that's what we want to be, is clear. That involves your culture and climate, the learning dimension, essentials, agency, and relationships. We're just going to take a few minutes to briefly summarize each one. So the culture and the climate, that's the overall environment that's created to ensure that learners feel cared for, that they feel seen. That's a term that's used. I really like that term, to feel seen and to feel heard. That culture is just very inclusive. So it doesn't matter what the backgrounds are of the students in the classroom, they all feel like they're a vital part of that classroom family. The learning dimension really discusses those particular processes that the educator has established to ensure that every learner has an opportunity to demonstrate their understanding, that they have an opportunity to apply that knowledge so that the teacher can actually see what they know. The essentials, those are those core competencies that are demonstrated by a teacher, that sometimes you might have called it withedness. It just seems that there are teachers that just seem to have it going on, but those can be codified in this particular dimension called essentials. It includes presence, disposition, pedagogical knowledge, content knowledge, and management of the entire learning organizations. The last 2 dimensions, agency, that's really the degree to which students feel that they have ownership of their learning. They can direct it, they can regulate it. So how has the educator created a classroom environment so that students are able to self-direct and self-regulate? And finally, relationships undergird everything. Those are actions that foster those healthy, positive interactions between the adult and the student learner. I want to show you this short video. One of those strategies that is very high on Hattie's scale is providing feedback. We just want to show you a brief video.
Everyone needs a coach. It doesn't matter whether you're a basketball player, a tennis player, a gymnast, or a bridge player. My bridge coach, Sharon Osberg, says there are more pictures of the back of her head than anyone else's in the world. Sorry, Sharon. Here you go. We all need people who will give us feedback. That's how we improve. Unfortunately, there's one group of people who get almost no systematic feedback to help them do their jobs better. And these people have one of the most important jobs in the world. I'm talking about teachers. When Melinda and I learned how little useful feedback most teachers get, we were blown away. Until recently, over 98% of teachers just got one word of feedback: satisfactory. If all my bridge coach ever told me was that I was satisfactory, I would have no hope of ever getting better. How would I know who is the best? How would I know what I was doing differently? Today, districts are revamping the way they evaluate teachers, but we still give them almost no feedback that actually helps them improve their practice. Our teachers deserve better. The system we have today isn't fair to them. It's not fair to students, and it's putting America's global leadership at risk. So today I want to talk about how we can help.
So thinking about this video that we just saw, we want to make sure that the feedback that we provide teachers is smart feedback. We need it to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. Give teachers feedback that's going to help them improve their practices. Using the Alabama Teacher Growth Program, the ATOT tool, if you don't provide feedback on each of those dimensions, then teachers don't know how to grow in their craft. And we want to make sure that we're giving them that opportunity to improve. And of course, you've all heard this quote before. Students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. How we react to student reveals our heart. We want to make sure that we allow teachers to know that we are there to support them, and we have to help them support students. So what does that support look like? We're going to offer support, but what supports are we offering? This is another quick video. We saw him at class, and it was an awesome presentation. So we just want to give you just a brief overview of this. You're not going to watch the entire video. We want to show why relationships are so important when we're thinking about teaching in the classroom.
Good morning. Welcome.
The first thing to know about Donna Porter,
You're looking good.
a teacher at Picayune Memorial High School in Mississippi,
Amazing. Wow.
is that Porter is relentlessly positive and upbeat,
How about that? That's great.
which is why everyone knew a collision was coming with the student everyone feared.
Beating people up, jumping people.
A gang member on release from reform school, DJ Batiste walked into Mrs. Porter's first day of class 2 years ago and brazenly asked her to cheat on her husband of 30 years.
And I looked up and down from head to toe, folded my arms and said, well, don't you think it's time for a change?
As if you're hitting on her.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's pretty bad behavior.
It is.
So I remember thinking, I need to take a deep breath. I've got this.
Got this, as in DJ goes to the office? No.
I said to DJ, I said, you have charisma. And he said, Miss P, what's that? And I said, you can work a room. And he said, yeah, I can. Shoulders back. Now he's like proud as a peacock.
Porter had guessed in that split second that DJ was a thug only because he wanted to be noticed. So she made him the class greeter.
Good morning, how you doing today?
This job, he showed me, of saying hello to every classmate every day was the first positive attention he ever got in school.
She actually changed my life. Changed my life.
Where would you be now?
In jail or hell.
In jail or hell?
In jail or hell.
DJ stayed in class and graduated on time to cheers. It was DJ who nominated Mrs. Porter for the Kennedy Center Teaching Award, an award given in the name of Broadway icon Stephen Sondheim. When we showed Sondheim tape of Donna Porter and DJ Batiste, it brought tears.
Why did that make you emotional?
Well, you watched in action what a teacher can do. Look at the pride on his face, that joy. I don't think I've ever been that happy in my life.
It's the greatest accomplishment of my life.
This young man.
And he's going to do great things.
When Porter teaches, she told us, she is reading her students, watching for who needs help and who's behind. With affection, she calls them lumps of coal and believes that every one of them, just like DJ, could be her next gem. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, Picayune, Mississippi.
And
it's really hard for me to watch that video and not smile. It just really just makes me smile. And there are just so many gems in this video. If you'll go to the next slide, please.
Good morning.
If you think of the behavior that Ms. P encountered, that's one of the real reasons why many teachers are leaving the field. It's really because of those student behaviors. Some of them are so extreme, especially now during COVID and post-COVID. It's just really just makes it really, really difficult for teachers to feel that they can make a difference with students. Next slide, please. So an emphasis on social and emotional dimensions of learning has been proven to improve high school graduation and college matriculation rates for both high and low income students. And there's a link to that study that's listed there. So these are reasons why we really must invest in those relationships between teachers and students. And one of the ways to develop that relationship is to help students understand themselves, understand their bodies, and particularly how their brains work. This has been particularly exciting information for me to share. It's actually impossible for students to make logical decisions when they're upset. That fight or flight mechanism kicks in. That's the amygdala that manages our emotions, and it really just shuts off our logic. I mean, you have seen how, you know, a mother perhaps who you've seen maybe a car has just pinned a child and the mother lifts the car. Well, the mother shouldn't be able to do that. The logic has really just left and the emotions take over. So yes, I can do anything. But it also allows you to just be in a reactive mode. So as a teacher is engaging with a student who's upset or who's really perhaps really emotional, it's really important to allow that student time to calm down so they can really start de-escalating. So at that time, the prefrontal cortex has time to kick in. So the student is able to pay attention and the student is able to focus. And then as the student further calms down, then learning can occur and the hippocampus can be activated. So it's just so important for teachers to teach students how to manage their behavior. There was a great example at class where Ms. P was explaining how the brain works to DJ, and DJ got in trouble in another class. And he got to the principal's office and he says, "It's my amygdala. It does it every time." And so for him to be aware and to be able to share that, it's just really quite powerful. I could talk on this all day. I need to move on. So additional quotes here. A study done with 4th through 8th graders specifically talked about the importance of establishing, maintaining, and restoring relationships that increase academic engagement and decrease disruptive behavior significantly. And relationships are powerful. So how can you build those teacher and student relationships? Here are some examples of those. On the left side, just be sure you're providing structure. Students may feel like, or they may act like they don't want structure, but everybody reacts best when they know what's expected, when they know what is going to happen. So ensure that you have a structure, you have an agenda or a schedule, and that students know exactly what's coming next. To some extent, offering them some choice that develops that agency that we spoke of earlier. Perhaps there's not a particular order in which activities can be done, and they can choose. They can do activity A first or activity B first, and it's up to them. Be sure to show interest in your students. Perhaps they participate in an activity or a sport. That's another way to develop those relationships. Being optimistic is always helpful, and to just acknowledge their feelings. That helps them, again, to feel seen. And just a couple of those strategies. It's so important to know students' name and to call them by their names and to pronounce their names correctly. That's another way to help them feel seen. That 2 by 10, I just want to talk about just very, very briefly. If there is a student that an adult has difficulty connecting with, practice the 2 by 10 strategy, which is for 2 minutes, for 10 consecutive days, engage with that student. Not about academics. It could be about an activity. It could be about home. We could do anything for 10 minutes, for 2 minutes rather. 2 minutes. That's all this takes for 10 days in a row. Just the consistency of those 10 days, it's really going to help develop a relationship that perhaps wasn't there before.
So students at the end of the year, when we look at it, at the end of the year, student achievement is directly related to the degree in which the teacher establishes good control of the classroom. The very first week of school, and again, this comes from Harry Wong. We want to make sure that we are preparing teachers to thrive in their classroom. So true or false, if you have your phone, you take it out for a quick second. Teachers should have at least 15 rules, norms, and procedures established the first week of school. So you'll take a minute and just put true or false on this quick question using the QR code, or you can use the bit.ly below. All right, we'll take a look. All right, we have 1 true and 20 false. Interesting. So when we think about the first week of school or the first days of school, and a teacher walks in their classroom, we know that they're going to be working with students on how to enter their classroom. Don't you go through these next couple of slides, and then we'll reflect on whether the answer is true or false. So classroom management is one of those things that will help teachers survive. We want to make sure that at the district level, we provide professional development, identify model classrooms, and have teachers do observations of that class. Talk to the teacher about the strategies that they've seen in the classrooms that are model classes and how those strategies can be used in their classroom. We want the principal to build relationships, establish and implement a school-wide discipline plan, model that discipline plan, and then provide rewards and enforce those school expectations. The teachers needs to build relationships, make sure that they understand it is important, as we've seen with the student DJ, that they know their students. Display, teach, and consistently enforce classroom expectations and norms. Create a warm and welcome environment conducive to learning. A well-managed classroom, we will see students that know what is expected of them. There's very little disruption, confusion, or wasted time. The classroom climate is relaxed, pleasant, but academically focused. So we want to make sure we start when students walk in the room. A lot of times in our elementary schools, teachers choose themes, but we know in our middle schools and high schools, that's not always the case. But choosing a theme displays pride in the learning environment. It facilitates a sense of belonging and ownership. And it unifies the students. They have a sense of belonging in that classroom and owning this is our classroom. So think about encouraging teachers, especially teachers in that middle school, high school area, to really consider putting a theme in their classroom. They also need to consider what goes on the wall. Even in our elementary schools, we need to make sure that everything we put on our walls and everything around our room has a purpose. If it doesn't have a purpose, then it shouldn't be there. A classroom should be a learning environment, a resource where the students are using the classroom to continue their learning. It's an extension of what's going on in the learning. We want to make sure they post their agendas, calendars, standards, and have bookcases. Resources like vocabulary walls, reading and math anchor charts, homework assignments, procedure posters, classroom expectations. All of these things can limit the amount of teacher talk that takes place and the readiness that ensures students are prepared. We don't always have to say, write down your homework assignment if it's posted in the classroom and students know this is what they need to copy down. That limits the distractions that takes place. It also can keep the teacher from constantly have to repeat themselves. Students have to raise their hands to ask questions. We want to make sure that that classroom becomes a part of what teachers use to manage their learning environment. They want to provide recognition. Are they displaying exemplary work? Is student achievement celebrated? Is there celebrations of success? You know, we don't always want to look at those students that make A's as a celebration, but I may be a struggling student and I was, always making D's and F's and I made a C. Well, we need to celebrate that progress and then provide that support to achieving more. Physical props. Is there a clock in the classroom? Are there globes, maps? Is the whiteboard interactive or is it just there as a tool? Or is the teacher using it? Are we building a community in our classroom? Are we looking at birthdays, recognizing students' birthdays, getting to know you projects? Both commercial and teacher created decorations are those things that will tie a classroom together and create that sense of ownership and belonging. This is what we want to make sure that we see, just a separation of space. In our elementary schools, is there an art, science station, a place for reading and fluency, for listening? Is there a library? Is there a shared space where students gather? In our high schools, we do want to see that separation of space. Is there a research center, a place for students to make connection, to provide reciprocal teaching, and extend and review areas so that when students finish their work early or they need help, they know how to use that classroom as a resource. One of the things that can limit classroom time is making sure that we provide a place for students to get resources. One of those things that teachers spend a lot of time talking about is making sure when students are waiting in line. We know that a lot of distractions happen in the classroom when students are just waiting. They're waiting for paper, they're waiting for pencils, they're waiting for books, they're waiting for handouts. That's when the trouble happens. So we organize our classrooms in a way that students don't spend a lot of time waiting, where materials are easily accessible. Then the confusion will be limited and we have students that will be prepared for activities. So this is just an image of ways that teachers can organize their classrooms, putting resources right at hand so students can grab them and get started on the work. Again, making sure that we have a guide that will help us to know what that looks like in our classroom. CHAMPS is one of those, classroom management. It has a proactive and positive approach to working and presenting those strategies in your classroom. We want to make sure we equip teachers with guidelines for success. In that classroom management plan, encourage teachers to state their non-negotiables in a positive manner. We don't want to say, don't do this, don't do that, don't talk, don't stand, but we want them to be responsible, always try their best, cooperate with others, have an attitude that fosters those observable things that we want to see that will allow students to be successful. And we need to make sure we encourage teachers to teach. Just like at the administrative level and in the district level, we don't want to assume that teachers know. In the classroom, we want to prepare our teachers or let them know that they don't need to assume what students know as well. We want to teach them how to begin the day, how you want them to enter the class, how to ask for help, how to walk down the hallway, how to get materials, how the class needs to end. All of this teaching up front will limit what students, what causes chaos later on. If I've taught you how I want you to enter the classroom, then they know when they come in, you're going to take out your work, you're going to get seated, a bell ringer is going to be on the board. Then students don't have time to sit around and chat or assume or, get off task. So we want teachers to make sure that they're teaching routines and teaching transitions. This needs to start the first day. It's harder to break habits once they've been formed than to teach your expectations up front. So let's go back. We asked a question at the beginning. How many do we have? At least 15 rules the first day of school. Thinking about what we just said, the answer to that was it is true. So that one person that put true, woohoo, we do, because we are teaching not just our classrooms rules that are posted, but we're teaching those expectations. We're teaching how we want our transitions to look in the classroom. All of that up front prepares students for a successful year and the teacher from less distractions later on. So just encourage them to teach everything. Yes, having 15 norms is not out of the norm. Right.
And so to that end, there's so much that teachers are responsible for, or building relationships, where we're organizing the environment, and it's so important that teachers are acknowledged, that they feel seen and that they feel appreciated. So it's important to shine your star. That's our last S. Are we recognizing hard work and dedication? From the district level, ensure that district leadership teams are established so that there are seats at the table from every single school. Be sure that everybody is represented. Recognize and reward dedication and hard work. What systems and structures do you have in place to recognize the excellent work that is going on from a district level? And ensure that school and classroom autonomy is permissible and encouraged. That's a great way to re-energize an educator, is to ensure that they feel empowered to implement what they know needs to be done at the school and the classroom levels. For principals, ensure that you really see your teachers. They have those talents, those hidden talents. How can you uncover those in ways that will uplift them and in ways that will really benefit the entire school? Build those school teams with those staff talents in mind. Those professional learning communities, those are not just meetings where we sit around and gripe, or we sit around and talk about things that are not trivial, things that are trivial. Be sure that we are talking about student work, that we are invested in student progress. And those weekly staff meetings, those should be purposeful. That's a wonderful way to build that collective efficacy that is so important and so impactful in a school, and really results in definite school achievement, student achievement. And for teachers, empower them to volunteer and set situations up so that they can be successful, so that they just a giggle, but certainly as an educator, I really felt uplifted. So these are just several ways to restore teacher morale. To the extent that you can take things off teachers' plates, we tend to, I know as a former elementary principal, we tend to add. Things are going to begin to fall off that plate after a while if we don't we're not continually intentional about what we're giving and intentional about what we're taking away. Praise goes a long way. When I was in a first grade classroom years ago, and I just praised James for sitting up straight and sitting crisscross applesauce. All of a sudden, everybody else sat up straight. It's the same way with us adults. We really appreciate praise and shout outs. It's amazing that food goes a long way. Just if there's a PTO organization that will leave treats, or if there are lots of different ways to make this happen, catered lunches, but that just really, really is food for the soul in lots of ways. Ensure that teachers feel seen and heard by implementing their suggestions. I was working with a school a few months ago. They have a theme established every year, and the principal had particular ideas for what the theme should be, but really listening to the teachers, the theme turned out to be nothing that he even had on his plate. So those teachers really were able to feel seen and heard because their suggestions were really referenced every day as they saw the theme for the year just implemented everywhere. The bonding activities, I've seen those. Of course, increasing pay whenever that is possible to do, that's always helpful. That ensuring teachers feel seen and heard through surveys, that sometimes when teachers are asked anonymously, they're able to feel even more honest. They're able to really share their ideas. Encouraging self-care in a variety of different ways, and those mentoring programs, just to be sure that novice or new educators have someone to look up to. And I was in another school, and there was a new teacher who actually had 15 years of experience, but that person had come from another district and immediately asked, who's my mentor? Who do I go to? So ensure that everyone feels connected through someone who's been experienced at that school.
You also want to make sure you cultivate a atmosphere or a culture and climate of collaboration. When I started as a teacher. I went into the, first day, here's your keys, there's your classroom, you go in, you close the door and you work with your students. That's no longer, what we need. Now we need to make sure that there are no more islands, that everyone has someone that they can work with at sometimes. And they need a lifeline, that person they can call when they need an answer to a question, or they need to get help with a student. So we want to make sure we cultivate that collaboration within our schools. And how do we do that? We do that by making sure that we implement teams. Teams are important. We need our leadership team, our PST teams, our grade level teams, our student activity teams, programs, but teams that give teachers an opportunity to work together, to learn from each other, to build relationships. When we talk about collective efficacy, that is that high impact strategy from Hattie, but teachers can't build collective efficacy if they don't communicate. They have to have time where they are communicating with each other so that they can build trust, they can build ownership, they can build that level of, I can ask this person. They don't know if they don't have an opportunity to talk. So collaboration and communication is important. We do know that teacher burnout is real. The classroom discipline is the #1 problem. Motivating students. We hear students don't want to learn. They're, dealing with those difficult behaviors, assessing student work, maintaining that parent-teacher relationship, organizing classwork, working with insufficient resources. All of these things are, what causes teachers to become burnout. But what can we do to help support them in these areas? We can make sure that they have a classroom discipline plan, that we have ways to encourage and motivate them to do better.
So according to a recent survey, over 40% of teachers report feeling high stress every day during the school year. I didn't realize that teaching would be as stressful as nursing. That's incredible. So as we ascertain that it's so important to ascertain levels of stress. If you're not able to determine what that is, you're going to solve the wrong problems. That link takes you to a Google Doc, which is a resource that will help you that you can send out to teachers so that they can kind of identify the areas of stress. So as an administrator, you can then work to address those areas. And so the next slide just is for administrators, just to provide some tips on reducing stress. It's really, we talked about praise. So acknowledging individuals with sincere statements of appreciation. You can always tell when someone's faking it, but we know when things really come from your heart. A novice teacher support group would just be an ideal suggestion so that they're all in the same place. They can all just kind of help each other. It's so important to minimize classroom interruptions so that classroom instruction is able to flow with minimal interruptions. The teacher's lounge needs to be a place of uplifting, a place of positivity, a place of learning, and not a place to bash or gossip or negativity. So encourage positivity in the teacher's lounge when everyone's getting together. Teacher recognition activities are always a way to instill a positive feelings throughout the school, and meaningful and practical professional learning. Something that's going to impact me as a teacher. So administrators, continue to survey your teachers, find out what it is that they need as you're in classrooms, add that information to the mix so that professional learning will be intentional. And for teachers, it's so important for you to manage your stress. You know, some people might have a gratitude jar or find other ways to show their gratitude. Breathing exercises, literally, it just grounds you to just breathe in and out. It's amazing how that really de-stresses you, as well as just shaking it out. I've done that with elementary school students just because sometimes they get the wiggles, but it's just really amazing how just giving a little shake just really can kind of decompress you. Setting intentions for the day can also release some stress for you as well. It's a way to kind of proactively plan to see, this is how I want my day to go. And remember your why. We talk about this all the time. I know Dr. Shields does a wonderful job of reminding us as to our purpose. Why are you here? Why are you in this profession? We're in a people profession. We are here to make a difference for all of our students.
So these are the resources that we used as we were creating this presentation for you. This is a great resource for you to share with schools and districts to make sure that we are supporting our teachers and supporting our staff so they don't become burnout and overwhelmed as they continue throughout this school year. You have any questions? If you do, we want to make sure we put them in the chat. I've seen some great feedback. Thank you so much. Mr. Mitchell, I saw that you put in this information would be great. As we were starting the school year, we did present it at Mega, and as you said so awesomely in that text, that there's no better time to start this than now. So thank you so much for that. And for everyone else, we do ask that you complete our survey. Your feedback is always appreciated. It helps us as we plan and prepare for your next lunch and learn. So please take a moment, scan the QR code and complete the survey. We really appreciate that. And it will also allow us to see who was in attendance.
Thank you so much. Dr. Shields, you have closing words for us?
I have just truly enjoyed reading through the messages in the chat. We'll be sure to say that we have so many new teachers, and one thing we just really caution is, you know, you get a new teacher and you're like, oh, we got to get this training and this training and this training and this training. And a lot of our teachers were trained during COVID and virtually. We need to give our new teachers a time to really understand the joy and the art of teaching before we start loading them up with so many trainings that it muffles the whole reason they came into this position. So we really caution you to really provide a time as we are bringing new teachers into our building, whether they're brand new teachers or teachers from another district, to really celebrate them. We had a great conversation a couple days ago that we talk about the art and science of reading. There is an art to teaching. And if you do not have joy and you in that role, then and you lose that quickly as a young teacher, is very, very hard to recover. So, we really felt like this was a good time to have this conversation. And yes, we think about the timing all the time, but as we've been in some PLC meetings, I think we even tweeted that out. We see a lot of PLC meetings that, can we all agree, are not PLCs. You know, they are not inclusive. They're not inquiry based. teachers feel very threatened when they go into these meetings. It's one person leading the PLC, which of course is the exact opposite of what PLC is. So we really wanted to have some conversations about, we have to be careful how we name things. If it's a meeting, let's call it a meeting. If it's a PLC, then let's call it a PLC. If it's a data meeting, but when we start meshing them, then it loses the integrity of what a professional learning opportunity is. And I'll just say something I stole recently, because that's what we do when we have these meetings, is we look through the chat and we're like, I never heard of that. But we had a meeting not long ago, I think it was in South Alabama, and the teacher was sharing that they do a wine and cheese, like WHINE. And the wine is like, okay, this ain't working. Or help me, I've got this student struggling, I can't de-escalate, help me. And the cheese is, what are the great things? So it's a great opportunity for principals and school leaders to say, I know things are hard, so let's get it out, instead of me telling you not to talk about it. The ATOT tool, thank you, Dr. Anderson, Ms. Smith. I mean, there's so many wonderful things we can do with ATOT if given the chance. Many of you might be old like me, I can tell, but I'm guessing some of you have been at this 20, 25 years, this is 32 for me. To have a tool that celebrates building relationships with their kids, building a culture and climate that is inclusive and kind and warm. I saw Miss P hugging on her kids and really walking around the room, just as my daughter, who's the 3rd grade teacher, you know, I hope does every day. So we're just thankful that we had this opportunity. We do want to take questions, and please, I'm looking in the chat. You certainly can unmute yourself. I've been trying to throw things as they were talking. I'm like, oh, here's a link, here's a link. So please check the chat, because I did include all the links to this presentation, the links to our other mega presentation. When they were mentioning trauma-informed teaching, we do a lot of work with that. I threw that in the chat. What does that look like, you know, when you're 20, you know, when you're 22 years old and you've got 18 and 19-year-old students? How do you de-escalate? What does that look like? We're really excited for next month's session. This is one of those things that I feel like if we've ever had anything go viral, I would definitely say the principal calendar is one of them. We presented this at Mega Conference, and Dr. Joseph Garner and Mr. Buckner, I see them in the room somewhere. They presented at Mega to a packed room. We will be presenting this November 2nd, which is a calendaring opportunity for principals. These are our high yield practices for principals to do each month, things to think about, maybe things to delegate. And so we're going to have a conversation about that on November 2nd, share various calendars that the team has presented, and schools can choose the one they want. But I think what you would be most interested in is we've created this in a way that every district or school could say, I like this calendar, but I don't like da 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 da, and I need to add this. So everybody can create or customize their calendar to support their local events and district events. So I will go ahead right now, and if you haven't already, I will put a link to registration. You guys will be the first to be able to register for that. And outside of that, Dr. Anderson, Ms. Smith, are there any questions that we have not answered? Yes, this recording will be shared on our super awesome YouTube channel. We're getting famous, y'all. We'd love to hear that other states. Just recently, someone saw us from, what state was that? Illinois. Yes. They like, hey, can you come do what you did for our teachers? So just a couple weeks ago, we were able to share some great stuff with Illinois. But yes, we will send this link to everybody that registered, the slides and the YouTube recording. These beautiful faces, every single one on this team, I'm a little biased, was sent to the state as, I call them the Avengers because that's what they are. I've never met anybody with such hearts for this work. So we all live around the state. We live at a location near you. So please know that you can reach out to us. We have amazing coaches. I see many of them in the room who have so much experience and expertise and just a heart for this work. So please know that you can reach out to us. Our job, I will never get tired of saying this, is to be a blessing to you. And whatever we can do to serve you and your schools and your teachers, please know that that's a blessing to us. I will pass it back to our fearless leaders, and I will throw in, I just realized I did not do that. I will throw the link in for the principal calendar registration right now.
We just want to thank you very much for your time and your attention. I'm feeling the love from the chat. We're just so grateful that you found use in this. Ms. Smith?
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for joining us, for taking your lunch time to listen to the message that we were sharing with you today. So thank you all so much, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day and look forward to joining us again for our next Lunch and Learn. You all have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies, I'm going to stop recording, but